Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, JMILLER. Every week, I chat with fascinating people from all walks of life in order to bring you knowledge, inspiration, and insight. If you enjoy the show, you can support it by subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with a friend. This is the JMILLER podcast. Jayden Lee, welcome to the podcast, dude. Super excited to chat with you today.
Thanks for having me on, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. So you've got a very, very powerful and emotional story, and I really am excited to dive into all that today and hear more about it in more detail and let you share it with everybody. So do you kind of maybe want to just start back maybe 2015? Is that, or no, it's been 9 years since you were first diagnosed? Maybe take us back to that initial day or kind of what led up to that, and then we can kind of dive into all that from there.
Yeah, for sure. I've done a few of these now, and I've realized that I think you kind of have to go. I'm always negotiating with myself of how much do I want to share, how much do I don't want to share, and so I think it's important to share everything. So yeah, I'll start from the beginning. So my story starts back in 2015. I was 2 weeks before I turned 16. I was always kind of an active person. I never played any team sports, but I always did I was into extreme sports like skateboarding, biking, BMX, all that kind of thing. And then when I was in middle school, in grade 9, I was in strength and conditioning class, and we would always do 10K runs. And I was always first in the 10Ks, and all my friends that played soccer and stuff, they were always like, how are you always first? You never ran or never played soccer, and they were always frustrated, and it was funny. And so I got really good at running, and that's kind of when I realized that I was decent at running. And so high school rolls around, and kind of took a bit of time off of running since then, and it was kind of December of 2014 that would have been. And so it's getting to the point where I hadn't been running a lot, but I started again in PE class, and it was getting to the point where I just felt really out of shape and kind of lazy, and it got to the point where I couldn't even run a lap around the track anymore. And I'm like, what the heck is wrong with me? And so I just thought I was out of shape. So I started eating healthier. I was going on runs at the river by myself at the trail and just doing all that kind of stuff. And I was like, why? What's going on? And then couple weeks later, it was beginning of January of 2015. I was at my buddy's house, and I woke up in the morning, and I had I woke up at 6 in the morning. No one was awake, and my mouth just felt super, super dry, and I was kind of dizzy. And so I went to the bathroom to get water, and I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I ended up fainting. And I don't know how long I was out for because I was by myself. I just woke up on the bathroom floor, and I was like, okay, something's wrong. I'm usually one of those people that I'm like, oh, I'm fine, and blah, blah, blah. So a couple weeks later, I was still kind of brushing it off. I was kind of nervous to tell my parents that I had fainted, just because I was like, I'm all good, blah, blah, blah. But it got to the point where I was sitting out in PE class all the time, and my PE teacher ended up emailing my mom. And he was like, Jaden's not looking so good. He's looking a little green around the gills. He's been sitting out in PE class. And so my mom emailed him back. I was like, yeah, I've been noticing the same thing. He's kind of pale, but he says he's fine, but I'm going to take him to the doctor now. So I remember this day the back of my hand. And so it was January 28th, 2015. I was late for school in the morning, and my mom wrote me a note to get out of PE class. And so that afternoon in PE class, I sat out, and everyone's like, why are you sitting out? I'm like, oh, I'm just not feeling good. I got to go to the doctor later. And so mom picks me up from school, go to the doctor, and he writes a lab requisition form for me to get my blood work done. So after that, go get my blood work done, and then it's evening time. It's 4 p.m. in the evening, and I'm just eat dinner. And my mom took my resting heart rate at the dinner table, and just sitting at the dinner table, it was 120 beats per minute. And so she's like, wow, yeah. So we kind of knew something was up, but didn't really know much. My mom had some heart problems when she was younger, and so she thought maybe it was something like that. And then so a couple hours goes by, and I'm playing Xbox with my friends. I'm 16 years old, and we're just online playing Call of Duty and stuff. And then I guess my mom got a phone call at 9:30 at night, and she answers the phone and hey, is this Jaden's mom, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yep. And she's like, you got to bring Jaden back to the hospital right now. And they're like, my mom's like, why? It's like 9:30 at night. Like, can't it wait till tomorrow? And I guess they're not actually allowed to tell you on the phone, but she was like, can't it wait till tomorrow? They're like, we just got to do more tests, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, so they didn't actually think, like, she was kind of hesitant, like saying it could wait till tomorrow. So they ended up having to tell her on the phone.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I guess they told her on the phone. So yeah, my mom came downstairs and she's like, knocks on my door. I'm playing Xbox with my buddies, and she's like, we got to go back to the hospital. And I'm like, kind of same thing when they called her, and I was like, why? It's like 9:30 at night. I was like, can't I wait till tomorrow? And they're like, oh, they just want to do more tests. And so I was like, okay. So I didn't really think much of it. Said bye to my friends online that I was playing Xbox with, and then I walked upstairs, and my mom's boyfriend was kind of like pacing back and forth, like in the kitchen, like kind of like I could tell something was up. And then my parents are split up. We're split up at the time, and so like 10 minutes later, I heard the door downstairs to my mom's house open, and it was my dad, and he was like, hello. And so I guess he was dropping off my sister with my mom's boyfriend, and so he was going to drive me and my mom to the hospital. And so I'm like, just in my head, I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is like messed up. And so me and my mom get in my dad's car, and I'm sitting in the front seat with my dad, and we're driving to the hospital, and I'm just like, okay, like, what the heck is going on? Like, you guys got to update me. And so like, I'll never forget it. My dad just like reached over and he grabbed my hand, and he was like, do you know what leukemia is? And then I just started like bawling my eyes out.
Oh my gosh, dude. Wow. Dude, that's so hard, man. Do you remember that day pretty vividly?
Oh, I remember like every moment of it, like everything that I did.
Oh my gosh. What was your response to that?
I just honestly, I didn't really know much about it. Like, I didn't even know what type of cancer leukemia was. It's blood cancer. But I remember reading in elementary school this book about it was like a children's book or something, I think it was, and this girl had leukemia. So I knew it was cancer, but I didn't really know like the extent of what it was. And so yeah, we drove to the hospital, and like I got admitted right away. Like, normally when you go to the emergency room, you got to wait for hours, and they just like walked me right in there, and I was like, okay, this is like serious. And so
Dude.
then I live an hour east of Vancouver, BC, and so in a town called Chilliwack, and so I went to the Chilliwack hospital, and I basically talked to the doctor there. He kind of gave me the rundown, because he was actually used to be an oncology doctor in the UK, and so now he was just an emergency doctor here. So he kind of knew exactly what was going to happen and kind of gave me the protocol. And he's like, yeah, he's like, you got to go to BC Children's Hospital like tonight and like start treatment. And so they were basically like, go home, pack your bag, and you're going to Children's. And so went home, literally, like, he was like, I didn't know how to long pack a bag for, nothing, like packed a bag. And then me and my mom drove to the Children's Hospital in Vancouver, like an hour away, at like 1 a.m. And I was in there for 8 days after that and started treatment. So
Oh my gosh. What were those 8 days like in the hospital?
yeah, it was just crazy. So it was like 2 weeks before I turned 16. And so it was just like, you hear cancer is like one of those things where you obviously hear it happening, but you like obviously never think it's going to happen to you. And so it was just surreal. Like, it was just, I remember going to Children's at night and going to the emergency room, and then basically telling me like what was going to happen and stuff. And it's a very fast process. Like, they know exactly what's going to happen, what the treatment plan is. Like, I was already getting like blood transfusions that night, because like chemo attacks are good cells obviously in your blood. So all my blood counts were super, super low. So they had to get me blood transfusions like right away to get my levels back up to start chemo. And so, yeah, I started chemo within 2 to 3 days of being in the hospital. And then, I was in there for 8 days, and then I got to go home the day before my 16th birthday. So luckily I got to go home for my birthday. And then the day after my birthday, I woke up with an infection, which was actually pretty dangerous because my immune system was super low. And so the next morning I had to go back to the hospital, and I had to go back for chemo, but I also had to go to treat the infection. So that was my longest stint in the hospital, and that was just over 30 days.
Holy shit, dude. That's such a young age for that to be happening too. Like 15,
And
16 years old. That's so hard, man.
Yeah, so I was in grade 10, and in Canada, high school is in grade 10 here. And so it was like my first year of high school, just kind of getting my bearings, and this like it was halfway through the year, and it was just like it really just like I don't really know how to, it's almost like a blur those times because I just felt kind of numb and just like I didn't really know what was going on. I was just kind of going with the punches and just kind of like doing whatever they told me to do, right? So yeah.
Dude, yeah, I mean, because that's such a like formative age where you're like finally getting more independent, trying to figure things out, and then you get this shit thrown at you.
Yeah.
That's got to be hard to deal with. I'm sure there were some like, were there like dark times where you're like, man, what do I do with this? Like, am I gonna live to be 70, 80 years old, be an adult? Like, am I gonna get through this? Like, did you have a lot of those thoughts going through your head?
I did and I didn't. Like looking, like everyone always asks me that, and I look back and it's like I didn't really like. I honestly, it's honestly I just felt numb. Like I just remember like I didn't really have much emotion. It just really like put things into perspective. Like I always hated school, and I remember like being in my hospital bed and I saw like stories of like all my friends at school and doing things, and it was like there was nothing more than I wanted to be back at school with my friends, and so like it just really put things into perspective for me.
Oh my gosh! And you said 30 days in the hospital for that second time you went back.
Yeah, so I did chemo for 3.5 years. So I
Oh
got
my
diagnosed
gosh.
January 28th, 2015, and then I finished May 23rd, 2018. And so I only actually had cancer for about a year. And during that year, it was intense treatment. So basically, like I was in for 8 days, then went home for like a day, and then was in for 30. And then they would do different cycles. So like there was one cycle where I was in for 4 days, got to go home for 4, home during the week, had to go
Jeez.
in or over the weekend. So for that year, it was very like in and out of the hospital. So I had to drop out of school. I just did school online because I didn't want to fall behind. And then, yeah. And so after the first year, you get on what's called maintenance. And so maintenance is I still had to take about 20 different chemo pills every single day. But I would only go to the hospital to get IV chemotherapy once a month. So that cycle
Wow.
repeated for 2 years, and then I finally finished that May 2018, and yeah, that was kind of the journey of that.
Jeez, man. What was chemo like? I've heard it's just horrendous.
Yeah, so like I was into like extreme sports at the time, so like biking and skateboarding and scootering and going to the skate park and all that kind of stuff. And I was always really good with that kind of thing. And so it completely just like deteriorates you. Like you lose all your muscle. I lost so much weight. It was really weird because I would try and do like things like normal things again. Like I would go to the skate park and stuff, and it's like I had to like relearn everything. Like I was so weak, and like I had to like get all my
Jeez.
muscle memory back and stuff. It was actually it was a really weird process because it was like I know how to do these things, but my body can't physically do it.
Did it make you sick? I feel like I've heard from a lot of people that have to do chemo, like you're throwing up a lot and you're just always feel nauseous.
Yeah, I have a pretty strong stomach, so I luckily didn't like considering most people like handled it pretty well. But I remember like the day before my first chemo, there I was on a steroid called prednisone. People use that for a lot of different diseases, and it makes you crave super salty foods. So I remember I wanted chili cheese dogs. I was really craving it, and so my mom got me a bunch of chili cheese dogs, but I ate it like 4 hours before I got my first chemo, and then I just like threw it all up
Oh
afterwards.
no. That's like one of the worst things to throw up.
Oh yeah, it was bad,
Oh
but
my
yeah,
god.
like it was like for me it was more just sad like seeing all the like for me I was 16, and
Yeah.
so it was kind of a weird age to get sick because it's cancer is usually in a lot of younger kids or older people, and so most of the kids there was really no one at the hospital at that time that was around my age, and so it was a lot of younger kids, and like just seeing like 3 and 4 year olds walking around with their IV poles and their bald heads and hearing them throwing up in the morning. Like it was just like, that's what really like, I knew I was going through it, but I was just like, oh, my heart went out to those guys.
That's got to be so hard to see that on a daily basis. Did you like get a chat with any of those kids or like get to know any of them while you're like in the hospital or sitting around? Because I've seen like the chemotherapy. I don't know if it's every hospital, but where it's like you're kind of in this communal area where you can like talk with
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, and like the first night that I got diagnosed, I was sharing a room with a little girl who had a brain tumor, but like those kids were so young that like you couldn't really have a conversation with them,
Right.
and a lot of times they were tired and just sleeping, and so I didn't really get to I almost got to know their families more than I did like their
Right.
parents and stuff, right? So
Dude, that's so sad, man. That's like, I mean, again, not only are you dealing with like your own stuff, but like having to just be, it can't be a very, I mean, is it a positive environment? Like, I feel like it would just be so like grim all the time because nobody feels good. It's like, who knows how long some of these people might have to live. Like, what was that environment like?
Yeah, it was sad, but I will say like the BC Children's Hospital in Vancouver is seriously like for the circumstances, it's like seriously one of the best places like that I've had. Like all the nurses there are so like, and you have to be obviously right,
Right.
but everyone was just like so positive and just trying to make light of the situation and like people would like people's families that were like their families that weren't in the hospital would come and bring like meals for everyone on the oncology ward, and we would kind of like, I remember the Super Bowl was on one year when I was in there, and so we all had like a little Super Bowl party, like the little TV room, and like, so for the circumstances it was actually like there was a community there for sure, and there was like a Facebook group with like all the oncology parents, and so it was, there was a little community behind it too.
That's cool. As far as leukemia, is that like a genetic thing? Is it like, is there anything you can do to prevent it? Is it like from lifestyle or do you, I'm sure you've done a lot of research and stuff on leukemia.
Yeah, no, I am literally the only person in my family that has ever had cancer. So not like not hereditary or anything like that. And it still blows my mind how they don't know how these things happen. I mean, I was a teenager when I got it, so like my diet was drinking Mountain Dew and eating Doritos while playing Call of Duty every weekend. So I mean, I didn't have the best diet, but what teenager really does, right? So I don't think I was really doing anything differently. And that still just blows my mind how there's this like still to this day, like I don't know how it happened or why it happened, but
That's got to be one of the hardest things to deal with, right? Is like, why me? Like, why out of all the people that it could have happened to, like, why me? Do you ever ask yourself that?
and that goes back to like that, like you always hear about these things but you never think it's going to happen to you. And like I was always an active kid, like I said, I was getting into running and I was into extreme sports, and like I was always just known as an active person, and like I wasn't like overweight or like, and so it was just like, how the heck did this happen?
That's hard, man. Have you like found an answer for yourself to that question of like, I guess you never really will find the true answer, like why it happened to me. But have you like tried to work through that and like come to any kind of conclusion?
No, but I'm a strong believer in that everything does happen for a reason. And I say this now, and everyone's always like, I will say like getting cancer was the best thing that could have happened to me because it totally like changed my outlook on life and like to what I'm doing now. And after I got sick, like I still graduated on time, and so when I came back to school in grade 12, because did on school online for a year, I wanted to do nursing because I saw what like the nurses did for me, and I was like, I want to give back and I want to do that kind of thing. So I came back to school in grade 12 and I took like bio and chemistry and all the stuff you needed for nursing. The university that I wanted to go to, you need 75 hours of volunteer work to get into this program, like in the hospitals and stuff. And since I was still getting chemo at the time, the hospitals and my doctor actually wouldn't let me volunteer because it was dangerous on my immune system because my immune system was still suppressed. And so I was like, I went to the university and I was like, hey, like, I can't get these hours, but like I've been in the hospital for the last 2 years. Like I have more experience than any like volunteer hours are going to get me. And so they said I still couldn't do it. And so I still was going to do chemo for like another year and a bit. So it was going to take a while for me to kind of get into that program. And so my dad, he was always like, he always wished he would have done real estate. He's just like a supervisor at a door and window place. And so he was like, you should get your real estate license. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, do nursing in a couple of years when you can. And so I signed up for the real estate program like right after I graduated high school. And so I've been doing it for almost 6 years now. Nice. And before I got sick, I didn't really like school. I didn't think I really had a purpose. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And I was just going to kind of go into like a trades and maybe do construction or something like that. So I don't necessarily know the why behind it, but I know that it happened for a reason. And I definitely wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing now if I didn't get sick.
Yeah, dude, I think that outlook and that perspective is honestly one of the most important and most powerful things you can have on anything in life. Like, because no matter what, like if you're existing as a human, you're gonna have some shit come up, some sort of suffering, whether your parents get divorced or you lose a loved one or you get diagnosed with cancer, like something shitty is gonna happen. And it's like if you have that mentality of like woe is me and like, oh, the world's out to get me, life sucks, why am I here, then it's just like your whole life's gonna be this negative energy. But if you can flip it and be like, man, that might have been the best thing that's ever happened to me, because now I have this new appreciation for life. I have this new perspective and like gratitude for things and being able to even be here. And it's like, it's so cliche, but like you can't have sunny days without the rainy days. Like you can't appreciate those beautiful summer days without like the shitty, cold winter days where it's snowing and you're freezing your ass off. It's like, if it was sunny and 75 every day, you'd take it for granted. In a way, I feel like having those bad things come up, and as long as you have that perspective, like then you can use them for good. And that's like all the things you're doing now. It's like, who knows if you'd be doing those things now if that would have never happened to you.
That's what I mean. Like, that's why I think it happened for a reason. And I didn't necessarily learn all these things until like, I kind of learned it along the way, but I didn't necessarily I didn't learn the tools on how to deal with adversity. I just kind of learned that stuff the last year after some other things have happened. But when I was going through, have you ever heard of like loci bracelets, like these things?
Yeah. It's like the dirt and the sky or something.
Yeah. So it has like mud from the Dead Sea on the black one, and then like water from Mount Everest on the bottom one. And I actually got this one when I was sick, because this yellow one, they were donating money for like pediatric cancer, and so I actually didn't know like any of that. I just saw it, and I liked the message behind it. And so the bracelet's a reminder to like stay humble in the highs of life and hopeful in the lows of life. And so that's really been, I think, the message behind my story. And it's actually been cool. I met Steven, the founder of Loci, at Devin's like ranch last year. Nice. And so me and him have been kind of connected in a little bit. But I just love that message. And it goes back to what you were saying. Like, I wouldn't necessarily be doing the things that I'm doing now if it wasn't for these negative experiences. And so you really can turn any negative situation into a positive as long as you have the right mindset and you look at it that way.
100%. It's all about perspective, I think, and just the way you look at it and the way you act on it. And so you, to celebrate like the last day of chemo, right? If I'm remembering this right, you did like the 100K run to the hospital.
Yeah. So not necessarily, kind of my story after. Not after my last day of chemo, so I'll explain a little bit more. Okay. I started real estate, and then I started real estate, and so like life's going really good, and so that was in 2018. I actually started real estate while I was still getting chemo. One of my first deals, you can actually see me like on the phone on my hospital bed, like getting chemo. It was actually pretty cool. So real estate turned out really well for me. It's been great. And so it's kind of talking about those highs and lows again. And so after, I basically started my career. I bought my first house in 2020, and like life's going really, really well. And then, August of 2020, my mom unfortunately suddenly passed away from a heart attack. And so she was 46 years old at the time, and she had some previous heart conditions like when she was younger, but like nothing since. And it was literally out of nowhere that I got a call and saying she was in the hospital, and didn't get a chance to say goodbye or nothing. So after that happened, I was in a pretty bad place mentally. And so that was August of 2020. And like a month later, like the night before her funeral, was kind of like, this is kind of like a really like moment for me that really like changed everything. It was the night before my mom's funeral. I got like drunk by myself in my house, and I was like crying on the floor. And I remember I think I was focused on the wrong things. When I started real estate, I was like, oh, I can make a lot of money, I can buy nice things. And I was kind of focused more on the materialistic things. And so that night I was like drunk on the floor by myself. And it's like, I was like, I'm 21, I have my first house, and I have all these things, but it's like, none of this stuff really means anything if I'm not truly happy inside. Right. And so the end of 2020, I was like, okay, I need like a goal to work towards to get myself out of this rut that I'm in. And I was like, I wanted to do a fundraiser for the children's hospital that helped me for a long time. I just couldn't quite figure out what to do. I didn't know if that was going to be like something real estate wise or what. And so I hadn't even really gotten into running yet at this point. And so me and my friend Cameron, we were hanging out one night at my house, And this was around the time that Devin Levesque did his bear crawl. And so went on my phone and I saw the video of like Dev's bear crawl, and I showed my buddy and Cam, and he was like, dude, that's sick. He's like, I wonder if you could kind of do some like endurance like challenge to like raise money for children's. And so I live an hour east of Vancouver, and so to Children's Hospital it's around 100 kilometers. And so he was like, you should run from here to Children's. And I'm like, I've never ran more than 10K in my life. Like, yeah, right. Like, there's no way I'd ever be able to do that. And so we just I literally didn't think anything of it. And then the next morning, I woke up and I was like, I'm going to go on a 10, like, I didn't even think about this the night before. I was like, I'm going to go on a 10K, and just like, cause that thought kind of was in my head now. Right. And so the next morning I did a 10K, and I did it in like 50 something minutes, which after not running for a couple of years and going through all of that, I was like, that's actually pretty good. And so I texted my buddy Cam and I was like, let's do it. And he's like, do what? And I'm like, let's run to Children's. And so I was done chemo at this time. But yeah, so that was end of 2020. And then in 2021, we started training. And then we decided we were going to do a fundraiser for Children's and run from Chilliwack to the Children's Hospital. And so trained all year for it. And then in October of 2021, it was like me and a bunch of my friends, they all biked beside me. Cam ended up doing like 70K, and then his knee totally bugged out. But I ran a total of 103 kilometers, and it kind of blew up. Like, it got all over like the local news channels and stuff. And we ended up raising over $125,000 for the hospital.
Jeez, that's incredible, dude. Man, that's amazing. I mean, first off, what year did you say your mom passed away?
2020.
2020. So you did this about a year after that?
About a year afterwards, yeah, like just after a year.
Dang. And your mom's passing, you said it was sudden, just like totally unexpected?
Yeah, she literally like I said, she had some heart problems when she was younger, when she was pregnant with me, but she hadn't had any problems since. And so she literally, like, it's a little bit of a story which won't go into like all the details, but basically I got a call from my dad saying she was in the hospital, and then didn't really know what was going on. And then I got a call from the hospital saying like, hey, did you know your mom was in the hospital? And I was like, yes, but she's getting transferred to this other hospital. And they're like, no, she's actually in the ICU in the Chilliwack hospital now. And I was like, oh, like, shoot, like, should I come there? And they're like, yes, come now. And so I remember like I rushed there, and I had to call my dad and my mom's boyfriend. I'm like, hey, change of plans. Like, we're not going to this other hospital. We got to go to here right now. It's not looking good. And then like I was the first one there, and I walked upstairs, and I don't think I was supposed to see what I saw, because I went up into the ward and her room was like right in front of me, and I saw like a bunch of nurses and doctors in there just doing CPR on her. And then I kind of like, there was some nurses outside that saw me and then kind of saw what I looked at, and they were like, uh-oh. And so I just turned around, and like right then and there I knew what was going on.
Jeez. That's so hard, man. That's man, that's tough, dude. I'm sorry to hear about that. That's especially when it's unexpected too. That's makes it way harder.
Yeah. And it was, and like I said, I struggled for it with a long time, and but it's one of those things where now it's like what we talked about, like going through those highs and lows, and obviously like I miss my mom every single day, but it's definitely that this experience has taught me a lot as well.
Do you feel like your cancer experience helped you deal with that too? Because you already gone through this really hard, challenging thing for 3 years, and then, I mean, I would imagine this was even harder if I had to guess, right?
Yeah, it was for sure. And like for me, like like I said, I was kind of numb, and it was my thing. And so like I kind of like more felt bad for the other people that were going through, like my mom and my dad at the time. Whereas like this, like really like just not having a chance to say goodbye. And me and my mom didn't really have a great relationship the last couple of years. So like I just hadn't really talked to her a lot the last few years. And so I kind of just like, I really struggled with that. And so that was kind of like, I needed to find a purpose again. And that's kind of why like my run was like, not only for me and for the hospital, but it was also for like my mom too. Right.
That's so awesome, man. Dude, life is full of the ups and downs, dude. It's, I think, like I was saying, if it was just up all the time, I don't think it would be like worth doing, in my opinion. It's like, I feel like you need the downs to make you appreciate the ups. And like, again, it's like, sometimes those downs and those adverse moments, like they just make you appreciate things so much more, make you so grateful to even be here to experience life. And it's like the Buddha says, it's like life is suffering. And it's just, I think it's something that humans have to deal with, and it's what makes us human, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, like what we were saying, like if I didn't get sick, I wouldn't have done this run, or if my mom didn't like pass away, like who knows if I would have came up with this idea and this goal, right? So it's like all these like big moments that I'm having right now, I don't think I would have had without these lows, right? And so I just recently did 29029 in Utah
Nice.
in August, and Colin O'Brady, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not, but one of his speeches, he talks about like looking at life on the scale of like ones and tens. And so like these 10 moments are like doing my 100K run and all, and like for me, like buying a house and like all these things, but it's like I wouldn't have had these tens without the ones, right? And so like
Right.
I love hearing that, and when you look at it from that perspective, it makes you appreciate those ones a little bit more, right?
Yeah, he's the guy that walked across Antarctica, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's a savage.
Oh
How,
yeah.
what was it like meeting him?
It was really cool, actually. Shout out to Colin. But yeah, I was able to talk with him on the hill, the mountain a lot, doing 29029. We were out there for 26 hours, and yeah, I was able to tell. He was able to tell me his story, and I was able to tell him mine, and it was really cool. And so he kind of shared at the end of the event. He was kind of sharing some stories that he heard on the mountain, and so he shared my story in front of everyone on the stage, which was really cool. And so yeah, I appreciated that a lot, and it was really sweet.
That's so cool. He seems like a really nice guy. How was the 29029 event? It looks like a ton of fun because it's like, maybe for people that don't know, maybe just explain what it is too.
Yeah, so 29029 is the elevation equivalent of Mount Everest, 29,029 feet. And so the idea behind this event is if you this mountain in particular in Utah, you had to hike it 13 times, and you hike up, you gondola down, so you're just ascending. And so if you do it 13 times, it's equivalent to gaining the elevation gain as Mount Everest. And so so yeah, so I was able to do that. I'm training for a 100-mile run right now, and so my idea behind the 29029 was like I want to get that experience of like, because my run took me like 12 hours, and so I was like, I want to know what it feels like to be up for like 24, 26 hours to kind of get like an idea of it. So I was like, I'm gonna go slow, be out here the whole night, and so yeah, I ended up doing it in like, it was just under 30 miles. It was like 29.9 miles, 29,029 feet of elevation gain. And it took me around 20. I was trying to go slower, but yeah, it took me around 26 hours to do it.
That's awesome, dude. That's such a cool event idea, and like, I don't know, I love it. Seems like a ton of like community aspect. There's a big community aspect with it too, which is cool.
Yeah, and that's what I love about, like, I learned this through my run, and I'm learning, like, that's why I love running and just like I'm an endurance thing so much is like, I mean, you obviously know this, like when I did my 100K run, I was done at like kilometer 80, but it's like it's all about your mindset, right? And the same thing with like the mountain. It's like when you're out there for 14 hours and you're like, this sucks, and but it's your mindset that gets you through it. And that applies to so many other different areas of your life, whether that's your personal life and going through hard things, or business and going through tough times in business. And so that's what I really like about doing all these things and all the things that it's taught me just with my mindset. But the cool part is, like, when you go to these events, like I go to a bunch of the all day events and 29029 stuff, is when you do these hard things with people, you grow such a great relationship with them through the process because you're like struggling with them, right?
Right. Yeah, that shared struggle. Because that's when you're the most vulnerable, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like you're just beat down, you're tired, you're just like whatever. You'll like open up to people, and it's like you have that bond and that connection through the same mutual struggle too. When you did that 100K, you said really before that you hadn't done much more than like a 10K, and I know you trained for a little bit, but was that 100K run you did in 2021? Is that pretty challenging?
Yeah, I obviously ran more than my furthest run I did in training was 60K, so I did like 60% of it. But before I came up with the idea and said I was gonna do it, I never ran more than 10K. So I totally just kind of wung it. And I didn't train properly. Like I was running way too fast, and I didn't really know like kind of what to do. And so I was actually out for 3 months in training with an injury. Like my IT band was just
Oh,
bugging me, and my
jeez.
knees were, and you obviously know how that is. It's tough. And so it was like August. So my run was October and it was August, and I still had never ran more than a half marathon. And I was like, I think I'm screwed. Like I can't, like it's gonna be a struggle. And so it was like middle of August, and I'm like, I gotta get these kilometers up. So I remember it was like the one weekend I did a half marathon. The next weekend I did a 30K. Next weekend I did a marathon, my first marathon, just by myself. The following weekend did a 60K. And then I tapered, and then I tapered for 2.5 weeks, and then ran 100. So like, I definitely didn't do it properly.
I mean, probably not the most strategic training, I would say, but
Yeah.
it got the job done, I guess. I mean, you got the 100K done. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was a funny thing because like I don't think my body was like recovered or used to what I was doing, and so the 60K in training actually felt way easier than I remember. Like getting to 60K in my run, I'm like, why does it feel so difficult? It wasn't this hard like 3 weeks ago. But I wasn't recovered or anything, and I wasn't really doing any recovery. But I was just had such like a strong why behind it, and it was like just all over the news and so like my mindset was just like I have no option but to finish this thing, and I was like, I don't care how long it takes me, I'm getting to that finish line if I'm like crawling to it.
That's so awesome, dude. I was gonna say it's just like the power of the mind. Like your body can do a lot. Yeah, you can have injuries and stuff that might pop up, but like your body can do always so much more than we think we can. And it's like pushing yourself. Like months before that, you're like, I never gone more than 10K. How the hell am I gonna run 100K? Like as long as you have what is that saying? It's like with any why, you can do any how or something like that. It's like, as long as you have that belief that whatever it is you're trying to do, you can do it. Like you can do pretty much anything you want to do. So you're doing 100 miles. That's coming up in like a month, right? Or less than a month?
It'll be 2 weeks tomorrow till I do it.
Nice. How you feeling about that?
Good, man. There's kind of like another why behind that as well. And just to kind of talk about the highs and lows again. Like, so after like, I think like my 100K last time, it was obviously, there was a strong why behind it. And it was like my mom and getting sick and everything. And then, like life just it works in weird ways and humbles you very quickly because I do this 100K and it was so cool. Like for me, like, yes, it was cool. I ran 100 kilometers. Yes, it was cool. I raised over $125,000. But like the coolest part about it was like, there was kids that were, and because we finished at the hospital, there was kids that were sick in the hospital that came down with signs and made me signs saying like, thank you, Jayden. And then there was a kid that was like too sick to come down, and he made me a sign in his hospital window from like the 8th floor saying thank you. And like just to give those kids hope of like, this guy was in our shoes at one point and now look what he did. Like that was the coolest part. And so I was like, after I crossed that finish line and I went through all of that, like I was just on like the top of the world, like another 10 moment, right? And I'm just like, life is great. And then life has a funny way of humbling you very quickly. So a month later, me and like 4 of my best friends, we were like, we're gonna go on a boys trip to Texas over Thanksgiving, and we're gonna go watch the Cowboys game on like the Friday or Saturday, drive to Austin, go to the Longhorns game, and then fly home. And so it's kind of like an hour-long story, but basically the first night we got there before the Cowboys game, me and a bunch of my buddies, we all went bar hopping downtown Dallas, and we kind of got separated a little bit. Like 2 of my buddies were at one bar, me and my 3 buddies were at another bar. My one buddy texted me and was like, hey, meet at this other bar. So like I had some drinks and I left. But basically, long story short, we woke up in the hotel room the next morning and one of our buddies wasn't there. And so 24 hours later, after like looking for him and him not showing up to the Cowboys game and all this stuff, we found out that I guess he was separated that night. Like he was on his own, kind of going to another bar or whatever. And he ended up meeting a guy with a nice car on the side of the road and chatting with him, and they went for a joyride, and he passed away in a car accident that night.
Oh my gosh.
While we were on like a boys trip. And so that was about a month after my run.
Jeez.
So that was like, I was just like, man, like after that, like it's like an hour-long story. I'm not going to get into all the details, but I was just like, why do I keep having these high moments and low moments? And like, after that trip, I was just like, man, like I've gotten sick. I've lost my mom, and I'm like, now I literally, like, one of our friends passed away on a freaking trip we were on. Like, I'm just like, so I was just in like such a bad place, like mentally. Like, that was seriously like rock bottom during that time, and I was going through it and all these things. And so I knew I needed, like, I didn't really know what, like, last year. So like after that, it was like a month after my run. And so I was just not really in the headspace to continue running at that time. And I know obviously it was going to help, like, looking back now, it would have helped me if I kept up with it, but I just didn't. And I was just kind of in a bad place again. And then, I've been, like I told you, Devin was kind of like a big reason for my run last time. And so I've been following him and looking up to him for a long time. And he was doing this thing in April last year of 2022 where you could book like a Zoom call with him for like $100. And I was like, oh, like, I just want to chat with this guy about business and how he's kind of got into like all of his stuff that he's doing now, and kind of see where he's gotten. And I'd like to diversify myself eventually and not just do real estate. And so I just wanted to chat with him. And then I was like, I want to thank this guy for doing this bear crawl, because he's like, it was huge inspiration for my run, and like just inspiration to and for me in general. And so we hopped on a call and we chatted about business. He told me his story, I told him mine, and I was like, dude, like, thanks for doing your bear crawl, like, and it inspired me to do this run. And he was just so fired up. He's like, let's keep in touch and blah blah blah. So then I started doing like one-on-one coaching with him. And then he invited me down to like him and Jesse's event, to like their first public Hell on the Hill that they did in Maine that year. And then he was like, the next weekend, you can, like, I'm hosting this event at Cedar Trunk Ranch, like, for the first time, you should come. And I'm like, this is sick, like, for sure. But I'm like, I live in Vancouver, like, one's in Maine, one's in Austin, like, I don't really want to go home. And so he's just like, after Hell on the Hill, like, fly back to Austin, and you can just stay with me for the week at the ranch. And so I stayed with Devin and got to know him really well, and just shared his stories. And that trip for me last year was kind of like a very transformative, like, moment. And so it is kind of like, after just meeting so many cool people at Hell on the Hill, like Jesse and all these friends that I have now from that community, and meeting people like our friend Ryan Callan at Cedar Trunk Ranch, and meeting all these people, like, it really just brought me back to like what I value in life and what I want to do, and got my mindset right again. And I started just like traveling after that, and just really like expanding my mind to like what's important. And I wanted to get back to doing these endurance things and hard things again, and whatnot. So actually after that trip, I got the idea of like, I was like, I didn't really want to try and do like the same kind of run again, because I was like, it was so cool last time, we raised so much money, like, there was so many people involved, like, how do I recreate something like that? But then I got this idea. So when you finish chemo, the highest risk for your cancer to come back, if it's going to, is 5 years after you stop. So this year is actually my 5 years since I've been off chemo. So I have my last check, because I have to get checked every 6 months, like a blood test done to see if I have cancer or not, which is obviously still like out in the back of my head. It's always nerve-wracking going to those things, just in case. Like, I know if I was sick, I would know it. But anyway, so I was like, what if I like challenge? I was like, I want to challenge myself again. And I did 100K, and I was like, I'm going to all these things in the US, and I'm meeting all these people. And when I tell them about the run, I'm like, I convert kilometers to miles, and I'm like, oh, it's like 65 miles. And I'm like, that doesn't sound as cool as 100. So I'm like, I should do a 100-miler. And so I was like, how do I create this into another like fundraising event type of thing? And I got the idea that I have my last appointment in October of 2023. I was like, what if I, instead of running to the hospital this time, I go to my last appointment, get my blood work done, and then to close out my journey just of cancer and just all the other things over the last couple of years, what if I run 100-mile, like, it's 100 kilometers back to my hometown, but what if I make the route longer and do 100 miles this time? And so I was toying with the idea for a long time. I got in touch with our friend Ryan Callan, who's a running coach, and told him about my idea. And he was like, yeah, dude, like, I'll coach you. And shout out to Ryan. He was the one that connected us. But yeah, so I've been training all year for it. And so as of 2 weeks tomorrow, I'll have my last cancer checkup. And then from that appointment, I'm going to run 100 miles back home to kind of close out my journey.
Dude, that's so cool, man. Dude, it makes me emotional over here. I love stories like that, man. It's so cool. Like, I think that's the perfect way to wrap up all that stuff. Like, dude, I mean, diagnosed with leukemia, losing your mom, losing one of your friends, like, the fucking punches just keep coming. And that's just such a great way to wrap it up. And like, I love that you're ending it the opposite way, where you're gonna end at home. That's so cool. What's the monetary goal for this one?
I'm gonna try and raise $150,000. So right now we're just over $10,000, and I mean, this time selfishly, like, obviously it's great to raise a ton of money, and it's great to do it for the kids like I did last time. But this time it's almost just it's selfishly, it's about like kind of like I'm just more like, for me to celebrate my journey, what I've gone through, and just like after I did I think my run last time, the 100K, was just kind of a band-aid for all of the things that I was going through. Like, it was kind of just like, oh, let's set this goal and to kind of cover up what I'm going through. Whereas the last year of just a lot of self-work, I've kind of learned the tools to deal with adversity. And that's why I want to challenge myself and keep doing these hard things, because like we talked about, it applies to so many other different areas of your life. And so selfishly, there's a lot more meaning behind it just than the fundraising and stuff this time. So it makes me emotional just talking about it, but it's going to be really special. I have a police escort to like block traffic the entire run. Nice. I have an ambulance as a support vehicle. One of my friends rented a full-size RV with like 7 beds in it that we're going to have like the kitchen stocked as like a support vehicle, and food and stuff ready to go. And like, I have just meeting so many people from all these communities, like All Day and 29029 and Cedar Trunk Ranch. Like, I have like 5 friends that are staying with me from the US, like Ryan Callen's going to be running the entire 100 miles with me. And of course he is, the guy's an animal.
Course.
And so it's just going to be like a really cool, I'm just really excited for it. It's going to be really special.
Dude, you should be selfish, man. You deserve to be selfish after all this shit. Like, you got to celebrate, like, you've made it this far. And not only like you've made it, but like, I feel like you've thrived up to this point. Like, you've done all this stuff. Like, you're making an impact. Like, you're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars and like getting your story out there. Like, I'm sure that the amount of people that you're impacting in a positive way is just, it's countless and it's priceless. Like, dude, so you go celebrate, go be selfish for the 24 hours or however long it'll take to do the 100 miles, man. That's so cool. Where's the best place for people to donate? Like, after this podcast, I'm definitely going to personally donate and put out stories and try and raise as much awareness as I can. But where can people donate to help out?
Well, I appreciate the kind word, bands. Like, it truly means a lot, and there's such a big why behind it, and that's why I love sharing my story, just to show people, like, you can go through bad things in life, but if you turn into a positive, it can be really special. But and that's why I like sharing kind of on my socials and stuff. And so everything's kind of on my Instagram. My Instagram handle is _Jayden Lee. I have the link to my fundraising page in my bio, and everything's going to be documented on there. I have someone taking over my social media for the whole run to document the whole thing. We have a videographer coming up from the US that kind of films a lot of the all-day events in 29029. She's going to be documenting the whole thing of like me literally going to my last appointment, filming the whole thing. Like, so everything's going to be kind of on there, and everyone can follow along. And anyone that wants to come out and run, like, I'm kind of making it as like an event in itself. Like, if someone wants to kind of come out, set a new goal for themselves, whatever, they want to challenge themselves and run a marathon if they've never done it, if they want to run a half marathon if they've never done it, I'm kind of encouraging everyone to kind of come out and set their own goal and do something hard. So
I love that, man. It's October 6th, right? Just so we have the date right.
Yeah, October 6th at 3 p.m. I have my last appointment, and then there's going to be kind of like a little party at the hospital for a couple hours, and then we're planning to leave and start running at 6 p.m.
Heck yeah. I'll put the link in the like description of the podcast too, so people can just click on it that way also. But dude, so incredible, man. Like, your story is so emotional, dude. It's like, I don't get that emotional very often. Like, I'm definitely not known to be an emotional guy, but hearing stuff like this, it's like, and not only like it that can happen to anybody, like we've talked about, and it's like, it'd be sad for it to happen to anybody. But I think what I love so much about your story is just your outlook on it and the way that you're handling things, and the way that, like, you've continued to push on. And it's like, it's so easy for, something like that, or something, traumatic, like not even as traumatic as that, to happen to somebody, and they're like, well, fuck it, like, life sucks, what's the point? Like, and they get into drugs, they get into alcohol or something, because they choose to look at it from a negative light. But like, you've turned this really terrible series of things into something so positive, not only in your own life, but like impacting tons of people all over the world. So it's like, I just love stories like that. Like that's one of my favorite things in the world.
Thank you, man, and I appreciate that. And obviously, like I haven't handled like going through those things. Some of the times I haven't handled it the best during the moments, but that's why I spent like an entire year of just self-reflection and traveling and just determining what my values are and learning the tools to deal with those things. And that's something that like I share my story, and someone's like, if someone's going through something, they're always like, oh, like I can't even compare what I'm going through to what you've been through. Like I shouldn't even like squawk or say anything. But it's like I believe that like everyone goes through things in life and everyone handles things differently. And so someone can be going through something right now that might not seem as worse, but they could be handling it worse. So it's all about how you handle these situations, right?
Right. It's like the hardest thing that's ever happened to you is the hardest thing that's ever happened to you. It's like like hard is relative to your experiences. And yeah, and it's just like you said, it's all about how you handle it and your perspective on things and your outlook. And it sounds like you've got an amazing outlook, obviously. Do you feel like you've always had that, or like it took something like this to be appreciative of life and like be grateful and have this really positive mindset? Like, did you have that before any of this, or is this something you've just
I think I got it after getting sick. Like I grew up and like my family was great. Grew up in like kind of average, like wasn't like my parents weren't like well off or anything, but like I always got everything I wanted for Christmas and like always got to go on trips and vacations, and nothing ever really bad happened to me. And so like it sucks that you have to go through these things to learn it, but after getting, so I don't think so, but I've always been a very motivated and driven person. Like I've always been like, I knew I wanted to do something big with my life. I just didn't know what that was going to be. Which is cool. Like now I feel like I found my purpose and what I'm here for. And obviously it sucks going through these things, and so I don't think I've had it the entire time, but it was kind of like after getting sick, it really put that mindset into my head. And so now I'm just like, not that I'm looking forward, obviously, to any adversity coming, but I'm like, any adversity that does come now, I have the tools to deal with it. And it's like, same with a 100-miler, like, it's going to freaking suck. Like, after you run 30 miles, your legs are toast and they're sore. And it's like, that's only 30% of the way. But it's like, it's your mindset and your drive and your why that's going to get me to the finish line. So,
do you feel like the similarities between running and like, negative experiences like that, do you think there's like a pretty strong correlation to, because I see such a I guess like common thread between a lot of endurance athletes or people who love running or cycling, whatever, where a lot of them have some kind of trauma in the past, and I feel like whatever tools you develop through that trauma helps you really excel into the endurance sports. Is it because it's like you have to endure through trauma, you have to endure through a hard challenge, right?
It's funny. My friend actually like a couple weeks ago sent me this reel on Instagram, and it was talking about endurance athletes. A lot of them have either gone through or suffered trauma. And I was reading through it, and there was a quote, and it was just like 100%, because like doing these endurance things, like you're going through that trauma and suffering, and so it correlates. And I think like when you get to the finish line of whatever endurance event that you're doing, you have that sense of like, I pushed through that. And I think that's why there's such a correlation between going through traumatic events and endurance sports, is because you're suffering and you're going through it, and it's your mindset that's going to get you through it. And that's why I love it so much, is because it applies to every area of your life.
Do you feel like that whatever part of that the brain is that gets like lit up when in those hard moments, do you feel like that's similar to like what you feel in a really dark moment when you're going through something traumatic?
All the dark moments that I've had, I didn't necessarily have that mindset when I was going through it. And I think that's because I didn't necessarily learn these tools until afterwards. Like even my 100K, I still don't think I fully grasped that concept. But it was after my friend passing away, and I spent a lot of time and did a lot of self-work that I realized that. And so for me, all the stuff that I've gone through, I'll fully admit, like I was in some really dark places mentally, and I don't think I really had that light up. But that's why, like I said, I'm not excited for anything bad to happen, obviously. But when it does, I think now I actually have the tools, and I can have that, like, okay, I'm suffering right now, but once I get through this, it's going to make me stronger.
Right. I love that. And one of my favorite things I always tell myself during like a hard race or something shitty happens in life is like, it's not going to last forever. It's like,
No.
it sucks now. This race sucks. This like week sucks, whatever it is. But it's not going to be down forever. It's like life has these ebbs and flows and ups and downs, like we talked about. It's like, I think that helps me get through a lot of stuff too, is like just knowing, okay, it sucks now, but it's not going to be like this forever. Do you ever think about it in that way?
100%. And a lot of times too, if I'm ever in a bad headspace or a bad mindset, I like to try and go back and think about like when I was in the hospital, or I often think about like those kids that are like, there's like the oncology ward is always full. Like there's always kids that are sick, and there's like, so you can always go back to that place of like, yes, I'm going through this, but like someone has it worse than me right now.
Dude, I love this, man. What's your like long-term vision for all this stuff? I know obviously you've got the 100-mile run in a couple of weeks, but what is coming up after that? Do you have anything planned for what you want to do following that?
I don't have anything planned. No, I definitely like, I've only done like, but after my 100K, I still had never actually done like an actual running event, like until like my first 100K was like my first event. So like a year later, like I remember last year I did my first actual marathon. And so I just love community and meeting people. And so definitely want to start doing more like events. Definitely want to get into trail running and do some more 100-milers and stuff. But no, like I definitely love what I'm doing, and I love selling real estate, and I think like I'll always sell real estate. But I also love like sharing my story and just inspiring other people through it. So I'm in this weird spot of like, I feel like there's something more for me than just selling real estate in my small town of Chilliwack. And I'm so young, like I don't necessarily know what's going to come from that yet, but I definitely want to like, I just get so lit up about helping people and sharing my stories. So I don't necessarily have any plans, but I'm just like, I'm excited to see where life takes me in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, as much as you might love real estate, and people still need realtors, that's providing value too. But I feel like there's just so much potential with your story, and like you're good at speaking, you're good at sharing your story and like saying it in a relatable way for people and how they can get value out of it. Like I feel like it'd be wasted potential if you just sold real estate the rest of your life and didn't do anything else.
Yeah, like I love speaking, and like that I would love to kind of get into like sharing my story and be on stage one day. So yeah, I could see myself doing that. It's just everything happens for a reason. Everything will happen when it's supposed to, right? So
that's right. I love that, dude. Well, man. Actually, this is totally off side question, whatever, off topic. Have you seen the documentary The Alpinist?
Yeah. So I was actually gonna say that. So when I was at Hell on the Hill last year, I had a sticker on my water bottle, like a Chilliwack sticker of my hometown.
Yeah.
And someone looks at me and they're like, "You're from Chilliwack?" And they were from like Arizona. And I'm like, "How the heck do you know where Chilliwack is?" And they're like, "That's the guy, the Alpinist guy. He's from there, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even think to make that connection." So yes, the guy from the Alpinist documentary, he's from my hometown and where I live, Chilliwack. So a lot of those mountains that he did in that documentary are like local mountains to here.
Dude, that is I want to say it's my favorite. It definitely top 3, if not my favorite documentary of all time. It's so good. But I can't remember that guy's name for the life of me.
Marc-Andre.
Marc-Andre, yeah. Dude, if you guys have not seen the Alpinist documentary, you have to go watch it. It is so good. It's so emotional and like, I don't want to spoil it, but it's so good.
It's so good, and I think it just does a really good job of like highlighting like where I live. Like where I live is seriously one of the most beautiful places on earth, and it really captures that, I think. So yeah, it's really cool, and I think it's got a lot of attention for like this area where I live too, which is sweet.
Yeah, dude, you said Chilliwack, and I was like, where do I know that from? It's like, I've never been to British Columbia, and then I'm like, I think it's from that documentary, because it's like such an odd term or odd name for a city. So I was like, I remember it from somewhere. That's so cool though, dude. That's a beautiful area up there. You haven't gotten into trail running yet?
Well, like I literally have so much like I joined like this year at the beginning of my training. There's a bunch of like trail running groups and stuff in my community. And so a lot of my training, I was doing trail runs at the beginning, but like the last couple months is because I don't want to hurt myself. I kind of got out of it, but that's why it's like, I have so many trails and so many hikes. Like,
oh, I bet
there's like in my backyard, there's just like hundreds of trails and hikes, and like I can just go wherever. So that's why it's like, I definitely want to get into that after this.
Oh, dude, that's got to be like one of the most pristine trail running locations in the world. I mean, I've never been up there, but it looks so beautiful.
Yeah, but you're more than welcome anytime. Come up.
Dude, I needed an excuse to get up to the Canadian mountains, so I might have to hit you up on that.
100%. But yeah, like 29029 is actually doing their event because they do different locations. And so they're starting they do it in Whistler, which is a couple hours from me, like just an hour and a bit north of Vancouver. And so that actually starts today, and their challenge starts tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, I'm driving up to Whistler and going to volunteer at 29029. So
nice. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Well, man, I know you're a very busy guy. You got money to raise and miles to go run, so I don't want to keep you too long. But thank you again for coming on and sharing your story, dude. It's such a powerful story that I know is going to resonate with people. And I really appreciate you coming on and being vulnerable with it and just sharing it. So yeah, is there anything else that we missed? Like, we got the links for people to donate, got the dates out there. Anything else you can think of?
No, I appreciate you a ton having me on here to share my story, and I hope someone can take something from this, and I hope it helps someone if they're going through a bad time. And no, I think that's about it. And just shout out to our friend Ryan Callan for connecting us. Of course, I know he'll love this. So no, just thank you again, and I appreciate it a ton.
Dude, of course, man. I gotta start paying Ryan for all my podcast guest connections or something. He's recommended like half of the guests I've had on. I love that guy. He's so funny. All right, dude. It was great chatting with you, Jayden. We'll catch you later.
Sounds good. See you, brother.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you in the next one.